So welcome back to podcast episode number 3 for Caprika Realty. I'm here with Brendan, broker owner. We're just going to jump right into it, right? We have a lot of things to share, a lot of market updates, keeping everyone up to date. And so we'll just jump right into it. Kind of what we're seeing. It's been about a month and a half since the last one. So a lot of positive news coming through this. So I kind of just want to dive right into it. I mean, we'll start on the inventory front. What are we seeing with the inventory front, Brendan?
Dude, inventory has been tight. You know, it's one of those things where if we look at let's say year over year, compared to like January of this year versus the previous year, the other year before that, we're like 40% less homes on the market. So when buyers are saying out there, I can't find any home, they're not kidding. There's just a lot of less inventory out there. And, you know, fundamentally, I think a lot of it happens to do with the fact that there's a lot of sellers, a lot of homeowners, I should say, that had around a 3% interest rate. Right. And so with those rates being so low that they had, they're kind of like, do I really want to move? Do I really want to give up that rate? Now, over time, that will change. But right now, I think there's a lot of people who are just kind of sitting on the sidelines. So there are sellers out there, and we'll kind of dive into more on how and why. But the as far as the inventory question, definitely short on inventory. I will say, you know, in our last podcast, we were talking about will homes be hitting the market in March? Well, yes-ish, but really it's more like early April. And it is happening, right? Like I know I'm getting more action. I know you're getting more action. So what about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I have actually started seeing a lot more homes than the last few weeks, at least in the coming soon status, right? They're not active. They're not available to go show yet. But even just running the simple search that I do for about a half dozen clients that I'm working with right now, you're starting to see more and more coming soon. Again, not active quite just yet. So I think that our timeline of more homes popping up in March might have been a little premature. It might have been about a month. I'm thinking a month and a half late. I think the winter slump in inventory in the housing market, which is pretty standard every year, is just going to last a little bit longer than maybe it has in the past. With these crazy markets, everything is just kind of everything is out of whack. And I do have hope for the next month or so because I am in there every single day looking for homes. And I see more and more coming soon, which means coming soon, they'll be active in the next 3 weeks and more inventory is better for everyone, right? And I know you were telling me earlier, you've been talking to a lot more people about selling. So I have a quick question, right? So in your mind, so you're saying that most sellers that are locked in these super attractive interest rates, they're not going anywhere, right? They're just unless it's out of necessity, they're not going anywhere. So touching on that topic, who do you believe is the person right now that should be thinking about selling a home?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, you know, fundamentally, we came from a market that was more opportunistic, right? Some people are like, oh man, I can get so much for my home. It's time to just make it move, right? Where now what I'm going to say is, I think a lot of people are, if they sort of have to move, maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe there's an estate sale, someone, you know, passed away in the family, and they're like, hey, we got to get rid of this home.
Family's getting bigger.
Family's growing, right? Like someone maybe they really desperately need more space. That one's still kind of like in the maybe. Actually, I have a deal right now that's exactly the situation. They just had a baby and they need more space because they were already at capacity, and now it's like they just can't make it work, you know. Mm-hmm. So they're moving. Job relocation is another big thing, whether they're relocating out of the state, whether they're coming into the state, something of that nature. So it's, again, what I'm going to say is it's more of the have tos versus some kind of life event is forcing their hand to make a decision. The people who are like, just kind of like to have maybe a little bit better commute, or I'd like to have a little bit more space, or, I really wish I had a bigger kitchen or a bathroom in my master, bedroom or something. A lot of those people, I think, are going to be sitting on the sidelines this year. Will they come back at some point? Sure. And if the right opportunity is there, sure. But I think financially, it doesn't make sense for a lot of those people when they it's that cost benefit ratio of like how much money is their current payment versus selling, buying, getting a new rate, et cetera, et cetera. I think a lot of those people are just going to be like, you know what? I'm going to let the dust settle.
Are there options for the people though? So I was reading an article the other day that said that a real good portion of people that bought in the last couple of years weren't 100% satisfied with that purchase, regardless of the rate, right? Whether it's location, the home, the style of home, whatever the case may be, right? are there options for someone who, let's say, bought 2 years ago and isn't happy at all and is willing to make the moves necessary to make it happen?
Yeah. So short answer is yes, right? For the majority of people can sell today, I think. I mean, if you think about it from the standpoint of 2021, 2020, 2021, kind of 2022, like if the market went up 10 to 20%, each year. So if you purchased in the earlier phase of that, there was still at least 10% appreciation, if not more, right? So let's just take some quick, easy numbers here. Let's say it cost you about 10% to sell your home between like realtor fees, taxes, maybe some closing help, all that stuff. Well, if the market went up 10% and it cost you 10%, you can afford to get out. So short answer is, I would say most of the people that I've talked to, most of the people that I've crunched numbers for, I think mathematically people could go, if they're really unhappy with where they're at, they can definitely sell and get out. The question is, if they purchased, let's say with a 3% rate, and now they're looking at a 5 to 6% rate, their affordability is now a lot less. So that's the rub. So let's say they were purchasing a $500,000 home before. Well, maybe now that's like a 4.25, right? So that's kind of the rub is, can they afford from a payment and a loan qualification standpoint, can they afford what they would want now versus if they purchased 2 years ago? And I'm going to say that's really more of the rub versus can they sell and get out? Absolutely. That I'm going to say for the majority of people, yes is the answer to that.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, so there are options. I actually, to add on to that a little bit, I have a client that I'm currently working with who we're working on the options for it, right? He bought a home. They kind of came into a little bit of rough times. They had a baby and the wife isn't working currently, right? So they can't per se, it's been so close to when they bought, I mean, they bought it like 18 months ago. And there hasn't been enough appreciation to sell it. So we're working out potentially an angle where they can rent it because it is a pristine location. The mortgage rate is just fantastic. The monthly payment is just fantastic. And they can get the rent pretty easily. So we're trying to work out an angle where they rent out the home to kind of offset some of that debt and then go and purchase maybe something smaller that they can afford. What is your opinion on that? Like something along those lines? Because I talk to people all the time and like, you'd be surprised how many people purchase even within the last 12 months that are like, I had a guy in Salisbury, which if you're not familiar with Maryland, we're in Annapolis. Salisbury is about an hour and a half away. And he's about 2 hours from his job. So he moved to Salisbury because homes are cheaper. And he was like, yeah, this was a mistake and wants to come back. Unfortunately, in his case, we can't really, it's really tough to work anything out for him. But the original case where I'm like, it's a home in Bowie and I'm like, we could potentially rent this out, offset some of the debt for the mortgage, and then go and buy something smaller that you can afford now.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, ultimately, as far as does it make sense to rent out your house? And I'm going to say, I love that question from the perspective of we're in real estate. So I'm a big believer in holding real estate. Most of the millionaires are in real estate, right? I mean, maybe some crypto stuff in there now too, but like overall, in like the history of people with a lot of money, real estate's always been a big component. So I'm always a fan of having real estate. And if you're able to have a rental property and it makes sense for you emotionally and financially, do I like it? Yeah, absolutely. So I actually just did a video about this. Should you buy or sell? Should you rent or sell the home? Or in the case of buyers, like, should you rent it out or go buy? And part of that question really, there's a financial component, right? Like, can you afford to go purchase that next home from a debt to income ratio? And the answer is yes. Okay, great. Remove that part of the equation. The other part of the equation to me is more of an emotional component. I've met some people who they can't handle being a landlord. Like you talk to them about what are the potential problems, what are the pros, cons, etc. Even if you have a property management person in play, they're like, yeah, I don't want those calls. I don't want to have to like financially think about what happens if the heat pump dies. I don't like, and even if you offset some of the stuff like a home warranty or other things, they're just like, nope, that's too stressful. I don't like it. Well, if that's going to be more stressful, sometimes the better play is just not to have it. Some other people are like, hey, no problem. I can do that. I don't mind being a landlord. Well, in which case, Are you breaking even? Are you making money? Could this be a nice long-term hold where that's now part of like, your bigger portfolio and you can make money long-term on the property? If so, yeah, I love that. So overall, big fan of doing it. What happens to a lot of people financially is even if they can afford to get the new loan from a debt to income ratio, the like mortgage payments, even if like the rent offsets it, a lot of times then the next step is, do they have enough down payment for the new home? And a lot of times people don't because they used up all their down payment to get into the current one. So that's usually the rub. Sometimes people have some extra money set aside. Sometimes family can help out. But I'd say that's usually even if they emotionally could do it, can they qualify for the loan and do they have enough down payment? That's usually the problems. But if you can, if all those things are yes, I dig it.
Yeah, I thought it's a really solid play just because in that specific situation, because of the location, a really sweet interest rate, the potential of cash flow, all that fun stuff. I was like, I think that this is the way to go in our particular case where we're working with. But
and the rental market's strong.
Yeah. It's strong. I mean, rent just keeps going up and there's no stopping it. And you're getting 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments in Annapolis for like $2,000 a month. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That being said, so we were talking a couple minutes ago, right before we started shooting this, is you had a couple quick notes on affordability, housing affordability. You're going to want to hear this because he talked a little bit about the West Coast, the East Coast, and it is positive news. So talk to us about that. Tell him what we're talking about.
So, look, one of the big things that we always kind of track is home affordability, as in, can you, for a normal person, can you afford to go get a home? And last year when the rates basically doubled and really kind of shot up, we kind of stopped talking about home affordability so much because it wasn't as affordable anymore, right? like for a while they were like, oh man, things are so cheap that anybody can buy a home. Then we're like, ooh, not so much, right? Well, the positive news is rates for like the last 3-4 weeks have dropped every week. And as the rates drop, that generally makes the affordability improve, right? I mean, pretty simple math here. The other piece of that is what's the sales prices. And so here's the deal. If we look nationally right now compared to the peak of July pricing last year, so the peak pricing compared to now, nationwide, the home prices are about 2% down, but that's nationwide. The thing is, over here in the Northeast, actually our pricing is slightly up. So we're holding strong, particularly in the DMV area. And we've talked about this because we're very well insulated with all the military bases, the government stuff being here, the medical section, like tech sector, all this stuff. There's so much stuff here that basically our wages are still up. Our unemployment numbers are still low. And the DMV area is sort of holding strong. So we're not seeing the prices fall. Now, appreciating at a very small amount, 1-2%. So it's not like, oh man, they're up 10-20%.
Yeah.
No, but they're not down here, right? And so if we say the prices are the same or slightly up and rates have come down, well, it's more affordable. So the good thing is things are getting more affordable right now, right? That's a kind of fundamentally what that means. But to take it even a step further, there was a graph I was just looking at that basically said, okay, what's the median income for an area and what is the qualifying, how much money do you have to qualify, have income wise, household income, in order to purchase a median style home? And this was pretty cool. And so in the Northeast, the median income was just about $103,000. Okay. But the qualifying amount to go buy a median style home was just about $92,500. So in other words, it's someone who makes the median amount of money can go buy a median style home. And that's fantastic because if that gets out of whack, that's where things get a little bit, there's more pressure on the market. And that's over here. If you were to go look at the West Coast, that's totally out of skew right now, which isn't super surprising knowing how expensive the homes shot up, right, during COVID. And the fact that you have Facebook, Google, Microsoft, all these people who've laid off a whole bunch of people. So we have the tech sector it's been a little bit more anemic right now after maybe overhiring during COVID. And you have prices that have shot up. And so that ratio is in the red. That is not a good ratio over in the West Coast. And this is a big thing when it comes to headlines. Are you listening to people who are talking about the West Coast? They're like, oh man, nothing's affordable. or are you looking at data for the area that you're buying? And so if you're buying here, we're actually okay.
I actually think that that's a fantastic point that you just made, and why as a real estate, it's just so important to have a local expert, because when you look at the headlines and you look at the news articles and like even just the 2% down, right, nationwide, that takes into account some of the areas that were very heavily hit by these drops, by the the market just kind of stalling out. And in a lot of areas, the prices have just some of the areas that got swarmed, all of a sudden people was like, we don't want to live here anymore, so we got to go somewhere else. Like, I have an uncle that lives in Vegas, and they saw extreme appreciation to the point where they almost caught our prices, and then they might have even gone a little higher in Las Vegas and Nevada. And they've always been very affordable compared to us. And I'm like, really? And then all of a sudden, I got on the phone with him the other day. He's like, yeah, it's not so hot out here anymore. It's not happening. So when you have someone that's local that can break down the numbers locally, because that is what matters at the end of the day, just because you see a news article that says prices are down 2%, it does. If it's nationwide, it's completely out of picture compared to when you're looking at something that's Maryland, and it's city to city, most cities anyways. And so it doesn't paint a full picture. And I think that's where a lot of these articles and a lot of the media online, you can go down a rabbit hole and start reading these things and be like, oh, this isn't going well. And I'm like, well, it really well is. We're seeing very competitive market here. Homes are still if it's a good priced home, it's still going very fast. So I think that we're at a good place right now for the spring market to start rolling out very, very hot.
Well, I mean, to that point, if we look on our local data, right, just our area, and even actually just East Coast, even taking a little bit bigger, if we look over month, right now, there's home appreciation. Right now, sales prices, they are up. Again, not much, just barely, but they are up. It's really only when it's compared to the peak that you could say some prices might be a little bit down, and that's, again, not even the East Coast, that's more West Coast. But yeah, so I mean, our data basically is saying, okay, we can see where that low point was, that sort of September-ish time frame.
When interest rates shot up.
Interest rates shot up. There was a lot of talk about recessions. There was a lot of uncertainty politics-wise with Trump stuff, with Biden, who's going to run, who's going to do this. So there's a politics piece in there. There was there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of things also, I would say. I mean, you had stuff going on with inflation, with crypto. I mean, it was the perfect storm of all these things where just people were like, I'm going to pause. I don't know what's happening. And during that time, prices came down just a hair. But again, 0.2%. It's not, they didn't drop 20% around here, And now September. And since then, steadily coming back up. So, I had a conversation yesterday, got our boat towed, good times. And I was talking to the tow guy, and he's looking to buy a home, and unfortunately, I already had a realtor. But anyways, he's in that $300,000 to $400,000 type price bracket. I'm like, that's a tough price bracket around here. And he's like, yeah, I know. So we were talking about just the different ranges where you have kind of a fighting chance, and he kind of mentioned he was hoping prices, he was thinking prices might come down. I was like, dude, you're going to be waiting forever. I'm supply and demand. I just don't see it. Our demand is still here. It's still strong enough. And we don't have enough supply. There's no logical reasons for prices to come down.
There really isn't. And I mean, you said 3 to 4. You could drop that number to 2. I think in this, locally where we're at, Annapolis, Anne Arundel County, around here, you go from 2 to 5, and it's still a tough time out there looking for a home. Now, put into there, if you have say a small family, it's a couple and you have 2 kids, even a tougher time because you need a little bit of a bigger home. And I have several clients that are in the $200,000 to $400,000 price range, and it hasn't been pleasant, to say the least, for the last couple of weeks, last couple of months. But switching gears over to a way more positive note, we have seen interest rates now basically since our last podcast. They have been decreasing at a steady pace. I mean, nothing like we spoke there. We don't want interest rates to just flat out drop down to 4.5, because then it would just become impossible. Mm-hmm. But over the last 4 weeks, I got an email yesterday. Over the last 4 weeks, they have decreased every week, week over week, a little bit less, a little bit less. Last loan I got quoted was like 5.75. Again, this varies for everyone, but in my particular case for this client, it was a 5.75, which is a fantastic compared to where we were at. And it seems like they're still going down. Is that something that we can look forward to? Like, I mean, I believe that they'll keep going down and normalizing as more market inventory comes up. But is that where you're at as well?
It's tough. So short answer is yes, but it's not. So right now it's been more linear the last 4 weeks. I don't expect a linear drop. I expect more of a rocky drop. But I do believe we'll get to whether it's 4, 4.5, or maybe in low fives. The question is that in 2 months, 4 months, 8 months, or 24 months? That's the $1 million question that no one really knows. Our rates were artificially higher. I mean, just the way with what Fed was doing, with there's some stuff in Wall Street, there's a lot of different reasons for it. But I'll just say, if everything else was left alone, like if the government wasn't messing with things, I don't think rates would be where they are right now. So once they start messing with things should go back to
I feel like that's the way that it is. They were messing with things when the pandemic hit and imaginarily low interest rates, and then they started messing with things again, and now they're ridiculously high. And I'm like, when do you guys stop messing with the stuff? Let us do our thing.
Right. Well, and look, I was all for during COVID a lot of the bailout type money to help businesses and people stay afloat.
Yeah.
Like, I think we had to do it, but because of the nature of how much money we basically just printed, that caused, in my opinion, a lot of the inflation. You can't just add in, X trillion or whatever and be like, okay, like that's good. Like it was made up money. And so that caused inflation in a lot of ways. And now we're paying that price, And so the Fed, they have to try to slow things down, almost causing a recession in order to fight inflation. They need to slow down consumers buying stuff. They don't want people getting lots of raise increases and everything else, because it just defeats them increasing their rate, that the short-term borrowing rate. So like they need the markets to slow down in order to slow down inflation. That's fundamentally what they're doing. Okay. That being said, there's like how they go about it and the conversations that they have signal different things to Wall Street, and that will have a good or bad reactions. And so the markets, they don't like it when there's uncertainty or volatility. Okay. And so because of that, we may see, it could be, summertime, maybe when school gets out, we might see like right now, gas prices start to go up. We might see interest rates jump up a little bit, but then, hey, maybe, a month later or something else happens and people are like, oh, you know what? Real estate's doing great. Prices aren't coming down. And maybe more investors want to play and give out some loans and buy up like the mortgage-backed securities. Well, in that case, if there's more demand, guess what? Rates could come down. So again, it's supply and demand, but on the purchasing of the loan side, right? And so fundamentally, I do believe we get down to a 4.5 type rate sometime in the next 24 months. I couldn't tell you when. And I don't think it's going to be just like this. I don't think it's going to be like this. I think it's going to be kind of like this. There's going to be ebbs and flows.
Will it be as volatile as because the beginning of this year was like 7%, 6, 6.5, 5.7, 6.5. Like it was very, like every 2 days you had to check in on a loan product or a lender, or it was like, are they still good for this, or what's going on? And then someone would be giving you an update that it's like, oh, no, we very negative last Friday and we're not there anymore, or very positive on Monday, we're coming back up.
I don't think it's going to be as bad for the most part. And I'm kind of guessing here, but the reason I say I don't think it'll be as bad is this. Part of the reason why we saw some of the spikes that we saw is because of reports. So other than just inflation, there's a consumer index. There's like, I don't know, I'll just say 4 or 5 different reports that a lot of the lenders and Wall Street are looking at. Some of those come out quarterly, some are yearly, some are faster. And so the thing is, the farther we get out of some of the mess that we've had, then the newer data comes in. And so it's kind of like, as more data comes in that's better, well, then the market's like, oh, okay, I can work with this.
Things are dropping off while like negative things are dropping off, while positive, like the 12-month span,
exactly,
while positive things are being added. So it's positive for everything.
Exactly. And so as the more we clear out of all the COVID nonsense, the more things stabilize. And if things are stabilized, I'm not saying that makes rates low or high, but what I'm going to say is there's no reason then for rates to be volatile. They'll be more level. Mm-hmm. The problem is, for an example, we were talking about this the other day, like the job market that was posted, like a month ago, well, it was inflated. Like it was way better than people are expecting. And so then our rates jumped up. Well, it's because, again, the Fed wants to slow things down. And so Wall Street was like, whoa, wait, things are better? Okay, that means more inflation. Crap. Okay, rates are now higher.
Higher rates.
But the thing is, a lot of people didn't think that job report was necessarily accurate and so on and so forth. So now that things are kind of revised and so on and so forth, things have started to mellow out. But it's the same thing. Again, there's I can't remember the name of the report, but there's a big report coming out in May that every lender I know, they're like, May, whatever it is, like 11th or something, like keep your eyes on May. Like that's like the next big one that will fall off and the new data will be out. And so if that one's okay, we should see our rates maybe come down a little bit more, or at least stay stable. Mm-hmm. If that's jacked up, which they don't expect, well, go up a little bit, right?
Yeah, so it's just a matter of trying to get it in while you can. So there was another topic that I wanted to hit on, but it completely is leaving my mind right now, to be honest with you. I think you had one other thing to talk about, though, right?
I mean, we talked about appreciation as far as the median income, affordability. Is a big thing. So here's an interesting bit just in terms of affordability. Right now, would you believe that for a lot of people, it is, let's say you wanted to go buy a house right now, and let's say you're going to put anywhere from 3 to 5% down. For a lot of people, doing an FHA loan is actually a more affordable loan product than doing the conventional loan, which is unusual. Normally, just for everybody listening, FHA, you would think that they're a little bit more, let's say, looser guidelines. Maybe you don't need as strong as credit. You could have some more blemishes. You only have to put 3.5% down. And they also have mortgage insurance. Okay. And so a lot of people, if they're putting a little bit more money down, they go conventional because usually you think might get a better rate, or maybe the mortgage insurance is cheaper or whatever. Ends up being a cheaper mortgage. But not today. There's a couple of reasons, but basically, there's some of the fees that, like with mortgage insurance and everything else, the way the stuff kind of works out in the back end, that is lowered for like an FHA loan right now. So the government made it a little bit cheaper, basically. Okay, cool. And those products are just a little bit more desirable, I think, right now in that mortgage-backed security market because of some of the guarantees and everything else. And so what we're seeing is right now, an FHA loan, the interest rates are cheaper than a conventional loan. Even if you're only putting 3.5% down, which again is strange because usually the more you put down, the better the rate would look because usually it's less scary in a sense, or less risky for the lender. But that's not the case today. So we're seeing not just our own clients, but like I'm talking to our go-to lenders, and they're recommending to the other clients that they're working with different agents, saying like, hey, yeah, we just submitted 3 offers and all 3 of them could have gone conventional, but they all went FHA because their payments was cheaper.
That is, I heard about that, but now that you explain it the way they are, that's awesome. Yeah, because FHA buyers are typically, up front, they're a little, they give you all the different like restrictions. It's a little less restrictions, but the cost wise, it's a little bit more expensive. But since it's an easier loan product to get, most people go that route.
Right.
And so at this point, what you're saying is that people that could go conventional because they have pristine everything, right? Credit, income, whatever, right? Are going FHA because at this point right now, it's cheaper.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Now, it might not be, maybe if you're putting 20% down, okay, now mortgage insurance is dropping off. So there are some like maybe nots. But if you're in that 5% down, maybe even 10% down, a good lender right now is going to crunch FHA as well. Now a little tip, if you're going to go make an offer on a property, that's where a good agent might show them a pre-approval for conventional and for FHA, write the offer as FHA, but be like, hey, look, here's proof of funds, or here's our credit, or here's this, like, have the lender call the listing agent and be like, hey, look, my people can go conventional, but their payment is $200 cheaper if they go FHA.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to go that's why we write FHA. But I want you to know that they're strong, because traditionally, as a listing agent, if I have an offer for FHA and I'll have an offer for conventional, I'm usually going to recommend the conventional if everything else is the same.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, it is advantageous for those buyers to go FHA. In a lot of cases, not every case, but in a lot of cases. So pretty well.
Yeah, that's awesome news. So the market is opening up. Spring is a little delayed, but it's almost here. We've had a great talk. I don't have.
Sorry, one other thing.
Go for it.
So, in our I think it was our previous one, we were talking about closing help. And so, look, when the market was kind of slow, we were seeing people get closing help. So I'm curious, what do you think?
No, so that's not a thing anymore at all. And I actually, oh my God, it's the funniest reel ever. Instagram post the other day where it was like sellers back on their high horse. And it's quite accurate. It lasted very shortly where buyers had, I wouldn't necessarily call it an upper hand. I would call it, a little bit more leverage, right? They had maybe one or two offers. The seller did in this case, and they were able to negotiate a little bit, right? That is no longer the case. In most, there's obviously going to be cases that might be the case, but I think the last 3 or 4 offers I put in, one was a 14 offer situation, the other one was a 16 offer situation, and the other one was like a 5 offer situation.
It's insane.
And now, granted, these are price points like we just literally talked about 5 minutes ago. We're between the 2 and the 500. Mm-hmm. Affordable, nice, really nice homes. Again, that's what pricing matters in this man right here. Very well priced, very nice homes. 14 offers, 16 offers, and 5 offers. And it's insanity. And it's not like we were submitting these offers that were like we'll just submit an offer. Like we were going above. Now, again, and we spoke about this in the last podcast where I don't believe that people are going to go crazy and in some cases they might with appraisals and stuff, but we were always top 3. And I could tell you we were always at least $15,000 to $25,000 over. Very tight timelines, very tight inspection windows. Everything was really tight. And we were still getting like 3rd place. And I have, again, a good realtor will reach out to the other agent, talk to them and feel them out, right? And so depending on the agent, some give a little bit more info than others.
Sure.
And I could gather, one offer was like no like we were right there price point wise, but one offer was like no inspection, or one offer was like cash, or whatever the case may be. And that was just more attractive to them as opposed to our traditional financing type of loan and with inspection, because I would never recommend to waive that. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult to compete. But yeah, no, it came and it went for the time being, the seller help. So if you want to buy a home, you're thinking about purchasing a home right now, I believe the best route is to start getting ready as quickly as possible and talking to your local expert, the loan officer, or a realtor can connect you with a good loan officer. Start working out them grants and the first time home buyer programs and all that fun stuff. There's tons of money out there to get qualified for. A lot of them have certain restrictions and requirements, etc. But if you need that money to purchase the home, it's there. And you just got to work with somebody that knows what they're doing, knows the guidelines, knows how to get it. and be able to qualify you for it so that you can use it, because the notion of asking the seller for help, which I mean, it was a blessing for while it lasted. And I did get several of my buyers closing help. It came and it went. Again, maybe not exclusively, but because I believe there will always be the one or two homes that, maybe they overpriced it, or maybe whatever, right? They get a little desperate. But for the time being, a cookie cutter home that everybody wants, forget about it. Forget about it.
It's desirability. Yeah. If there's 2, 3, 4, 10, or 15 people who want the home, why would the seller give something up? It's really, again, supply and demand. Look, supply and demand basically rules everything in real estate, whether it's the interest rate, whether it's the inventory, whether it's how strong the offers is. Supply and demand. It really does. So as we get more inventory, which we are, but we have to have substantially a lot more inventory in order to make up for the current demand. And so closing help.
Yeah, that's not really a thing. I mean, like I said, in some cases it may be, but I gauge the audience before I ever start going that route. And by gauge the audience, I mean look at the home, look at the comps, maybe talk to a listing agent, do all these things before is any consideration at this point. I'm like it highly unlikely you'll get this home with seller. I mean, I'm honest. I'm like you're not getting this home with seller help added on there. And it is what it is, right? I'd rather be honest than be submitting these offers full of false hope.
Yep, I agree.
We're good. Awesome. Well, anyways, a fantastic session. We learned a lot. We talked about a lot, the market. We're going to start seeing more homes on the market. If you're out there looking, look out the next 30 to 45 days. I think we're going to see more homes on the market. Interest rates are more positive. We're headed in the right direction. Thanks for joining episode number 3. Episode number 3. This is Carlos with Caprika Realty. You can follow me at Carlos Maryland Realtor, divided by underscores on pretty much everything: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. And you're at?
Brendan Spear or Annapolis Diggs. You'll see all my stuff.
And at Caprika Realty on Instagram. All right. Thanks for watching or listening. Okay.